Is Councilman Griffin on yet?
I believe we're just waiting for Councilmember Griffin and Councilmember Waring, but everyone else is signed on.
Okay. Maybe we should get started for the public's sake. It is 4:30. Councilman Mitchell, can I call on you to do the invocation for us, please? Unless that's Harry that just got on. Is that Harry? Not yet.
I don't believe so.
Okay. Councilman Mitchell.
Okay, let's bow our head. Dear Father and God of all mankind, forgive our foolish ways. Reclothe us in our rightful mind and do for reference praise. Father, as we come to this Ways and Means meeting, let us be mindful what we're here to do today. Let us be looking at all people that we are representing in the city of Charleston. And let people know that it's only one Charleston. So we all need to work together as one in harmony and peace. And then we can go a long way in saying that we have done what you ask us to do. These blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Approval of minutes.
Move for
approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Bids and purchases.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Ayes have it. Item 4.
Move for approval.
Second.
4 and
and
5.
5.
4
4
and
and 5.
okay.
Second on 4 and 5.
Okay. Any discussion regarding 4 and 5, the Office of Cultural Affairs approval of grant applications? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Parks Department
Move for
approval.
approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion regarding approval to submit? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Housing and Community Development approval of
Move for
contract.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Item 9,
Move for approval.
Second.
moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Chair, I think we
Aye.
missed 8. Did we
That's
miss 8?
That was 8.
Oh, that was 8, I'm sorry.
Was 8.
Okay, so now we're on 9.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, item number 10, Parks Capital Projects approval of Daniel Island Recreation Center change order number 8, and the amount of 48,000.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. 11, Stormwater Management
Move for
approval.
approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Item 12, Stormwater Management approval.
Move for
Second.
approval.
Move for approval.
Okay.
Second.
This is for the Forest Acre Drainage Project. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it.
Move that 13 and 14 be taken together, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on items 13 and 14? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Item 15, Police
Move for
Fire.
approval.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Item 16,
Move
Police.
for approval.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 The ayes have it. Item 17, Executive Department approval of ARP funds for City of Charleston employee bonuses.
Move for approval.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Committee reports, starting with our Chairman Jackson. The Committee on Human Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, on August 19th, we had a Human Resources Standing Committee meeting where our main agenda items were to take up for new business the review and approval of the full benefit package that will go into effect ahead of our passage of our budget, which is why we need to do that so that we can be enrolling employees for 2022. So the health plan, medical, Connect Your Care, Optimum Financial, which are all the employee contributions that they can make to a health type of set aside plan, as well as their other expenses that are eligible. All of those were approved by the full committee on a voice vote. We also agreed to defer the stop loss agreement, and that will go straight to the Ways and Means Committee at a future date. We also agreed to the life and disability insurance policy renewal. Nothing has changed with those benefits. And we heard about the voluntary insurance program that every employee is eligible to sign up and pay for as an information only item. And then we heard a very thorough report that I think we will be repeating when we get to more of the whole budget deliberations, and including talking about increases in our pay plan for 2022. And so we had a very thorough report from Director Cross and her staff about employee turnover, how that impacts the pay plan, and any employee bonuses that we're hoping to have available for the hardworking staff members of the city of Charleston. I do think that we left off on this printout an old business item that we took up at the end of the meeting. And basically that was to review last year's reaction to the response to the resolution that the full council took to try to begin a paid family life leave benefit in 2021. And a year ago, we recommended an incremental beginning to those benefits. And as a Human Resources Committee, and then again at the council, when we passed the budget, we agreed we were going to defer any new paid family life leave benefit. We saw a revised version of that opportunity, the schedule that could potentially fit into our 2022 Human Resources Benefits Program. And essentially it was recommended and updated for actual numbers of people that would be eligible for the kinds of leave that they took during this past year or two, that essentially used up their own accumulated leave or came out of their pocket when they had to stay home on an unpaid leave approval. So we are going to, as a HR committee, we took a vote to say that we will put this scaled back version in front of the Ad Hoc Budget Committee, as well as the full council, and make it conditioned on the fact that we would at the same time be able to increase pay rates for either all levels or certain levels of the employee pay plan. So it's a conditional recommendation that would be dependent on first increasing pay. And if we have funds available after that, then we would be asking the council to approve or to add a new paid family life leave, a very scaled back version. Thank you.
Just a quick question for our clerk of council. The chairman is absolutely correct that that was an issue that was thoroughly discussed and even voted on at our human resource meeting. how do we get this back on this agenda so that when we vote on this report, it's included? Do we need a 2/3 to do that because it's not on the agenda?
I don't think it requires a 2/3 vote because I think you're just asking that it be forwarded to the ad hoc committee for consideration. What we do is we just copy whatever was on the committee agenda to place it on our agenda, on the Ways and Means agenda. But I think that we can include that as a recommendation to forward to the ad hoc committee without having to have a 2/3 vote. I mean, that was something that the committee discussed.
Yes.
And so I think it would have to be considered by the ad hoc budget committee before it comes back to Ways and Means and Council for approval anyway. So I think that's fine to include it as part of the report.
Okay, under old business, yes.
Thank you very much.
Right, and that's the family leave requirement. Am I correct, Chairman, Madam Chairman?
Yes, paid family life leave is what we've had on our horizon for the last couple of years. The council voted to endorse the city to establish a paid family life leave benefit, but
Yes.
unfortunately, our financial circumstances didn't allow that to go into effect in any version of it last year.
Okay, and the only one in this list of new business that does not require a vote is the voluntary insurance information. Am I correct?
Item small v too was for information only. That was reporting. So the last two items, it's items little I, 2I, 3I were all votes that we took that we're recommending to Ways and Means. Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion with regard to the Committee on Human Resources report? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? The ayes have it. Committee on Real Estate?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Amy Wharton actually had a presentation related to item number 17 about the ARP funds that I think she had prepared for the committee that she needed to share.
Okay. This is item 17.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Amy Wharton?
And Amy, I think you're on mute. Amy, I think you're on mute.
I am. Can I share my screen, please?
Yes, Velvet, if you could take down the agenda, thank you.
Okay, can you all see this okay?
Yes.
So we wanted to bring forth the what the ad hoc committee had discussed for all of the first tranche of the ARPA funds and not just the employee bonus, just to let you know what we would be bringing forth in a budget amendment at the next meeting on the 28th of September. So I will go over that. So I did a presentation about the ARPA funds back in June. So basically the 4 main categories were responding to COVID-19 or negative economic impact, premium pay for eligible workers, for government services to the extent of the loss of revenue, and investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. For the most part, we're focusing on number 3, the government services to the extent of the loss of revenue. So suggestions we discussed with ad hoc, whereas the COVID-19 response, we have unbudgeted expenses for supplies again this year to protect against the virus. And we also have vaccination costs as well that we could cover with those funds. Revenue loss, to restore the one-time expenditure items we cut from the budget in 2021. We could not pay out all of the grant funds that we have for accommodations tax and community assistance grant recipients in 2020. So we recommended paying some portion of what we had cut from them in 2020. Restore the transfers to affordable housing and the drainage fund, a bonus for our employees, and also maintenance for PAYGO funded building of infrastructure. We had suggested the incubator site at the James E. Lewis apartment building and the navigation center and other unfunded or underfunded projects that meet the spirit and intent of the funding. So the recommendation from Adhoc for the use of the funds, this is for the first tranche only. We won't receive the second tranche until June of 2022. So you already approved the repeal of the tax increase budgeted for 2021. The COVID-19 expenditures incurred in 2021 that were not budgeted, that's approximately $36,000. And the one-time expenditures that were cut from the 2021 budget. Some of those were equipment for police, fire, and recreation, the replacement of the Hazel Parker roof, garbage cart tags, abandoned boat removal, and some training and studies related to equity, inclusion, and racial conciliation. Accommodations tax and community assistance grantees for the 2020 applicants. It was recommended to pay the remaining 50% of the community assistance grants and pay 25% of the remaining accommodations tax grants. And that's if the organization was able to hold their event or they had qualifying expenditures for that event. The drainage and affordable housing transfers, bonuses to employees in lieu of the COLA we could not fund, grants to nonprofit agencies. We already have this advertised. The application is out and due September 30th. We will use the same procedure as we have in the past for community assistance grants. We have an internal review committee that will make a recommendation to the mayor, and then we will bring that recommendation forward to council for approval. Funding for both the James E. Lewis Incubator Site and the Navigation Center, critical needs grant awards to nonprofits, and the Palmetto Artisan Program, which was on the agenda tonight that you just approved. For the bonuses, because I know everybody's would probably want more information about that. We initially recommended a 3% across the board bonus as a replacement for the COLA. The mayor asked us to go back and look at it and grade the bonuses to provide our lowest paid employees with a higher bonus amount. And so by pay grade, this is what it would look like. And I know it might be hard to see, but you have non-sworn and fire department and police all separated, so you can see approximately where it is. But it would go from 4.5% to our lowest paid employees to 2.5% to our highest paid. That was great. Okay. So in summary, this is what we had allocated for the first tranche. You see the repeal of property tax increase was $3.7 million. All of the things that we just talked about, drainage and affordable housing transfers was $700,000. The remaining accommodations tax and community assistance would be around $638,000. The one-time expenditures that we had cut in 2021 was $615,000. The bonuses were almost 3.3. Allocating grants to nonprofits, that's the applications we have out there now, is $400,000. And then the amounts for James E. Lewis Incubator Site and the Navigation Center equally to each other for right now. We're also recommending allocating another $400,000 from the second tranche for grants to nonprofits, and then possibly more funding for both the Incubator Site and the Navigation Center in the second tranche as well. And right now we have no other recommendations for the second tranche, so we still need to work on that. So the budget amendment that you'll see at the September 28th meeting will be a little bit different than this. We will include all of the items that we're amending the 2021 budget. Some of them will go to the 2022 budget, so the total amount won't equal, the amendment won't be the full amount. We've already approved the 3.7, so that wouldn't be included in this budget amendment. And the critical needs grants award will be brought to council as awarded for approval, as they both have to meet the requirements of the ARPA guidelines and also our state budget proviso, where they have to be a line item in our budget. So we'd have to do those separately and bring them to you for approval. And then we will, we're going to create a separate reserve account for any of the other projects that we have to keep that separated and held until we need the money for the projects. When the projects come forward, the contracts, and we would approve them again through council. The budget amendment will look like this. When you see it on the 28th, it'll be $4.6 million for those items that we are amending the 2021 budget for. It's the COVID-19 expenses, the 2020 community assistance and accommodations tax grants, both the transfers out to the affordable housing and to the drainage fund, the bonuses for employees, and the Palmetto Artisan Program. anybody have any questions on that? And then the remaining, which will be in the 2022 budget, and you'll approve it at that time, is the one-time expenditures, because it's September now. We're assuming that most of the departments wouldn't be able to purchase those things in time for it in 2021. So we'll just put them in the 2022 budget. The grants to the nonprofits, which that application process will take a little while. So we're not expecting that that would happen in the 2021 budget, but early in 2022. And then the reserve for the two projects, the James E. Lewis Incubator Site and the Navigation Center. We're working with legal on what that formal approval will be. So we just want to make sure we have approval of the whole allocation of those funds by council. And then we'll also include the $400,000 commitment of the second tranche for the grants to the nonprofits. That would be a total of $800,000 for those grants. And just as a point of reference, we typically budget $400,000 in community assistance annually and almost $2 million in accommodations tax grants. We don't have a plan right now to award accommodations tax grants in 2022, just because we're still uncertain of our revenues and the commitments and expenditures that we pay out of those funds. But once our revenues are rebounding, so once we look at that and feel comfortable, we could also do that in 2022 if we decided to, and later amend that budget. And that was all I had. So that will be the amendment and some type of formal approval by you all for the allocation of the whole $10 million. Does anybody have any questions, concerns? No?
Looks
Okay.
good.
Okay,
Good job, Amy.
sure. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Shade has his hand up. Mr. Chairman, I think you're on mute.
Mr. Chairman Dudley?
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, we're on item 19, am I correct? Because 17 does not require a vote. Am I
Mr.
correct?
Chairman, Councilmember Shade wanted to be recognized.
Councilman Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amy, you have been sort of throwing up the yellow flag and warning us concerning our revenues on accommodations and hospitality. Have you been, I presume that you have, but have you noticed any kind of dip or change in the amount of money coming in from those two sources?
So right now we're well above what we budgeted for our tourism revenues because we were super conservative with that. But we've lost years of growth. And I think the last time we reported out to you, we were at 2015 numbers for accommodations tax and 2017 for hospitality. So that's where our revenue wise back to 2015 and 17. But we're watching that, and I mean we're getting back there, but it's just taking a little bit of time. Did that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any more questions for Amy? If not, thanks, Amy, very much.
You're welcome.
Item 19, the Committee on Real Estate, Chairman Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Committee on Real Estate met yesterday afternoon at promptly 3 o'clock. We had several items of business to take in consideration. I'm going to request that we go out of order just a little bit, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. Just
Sure.
items A, C, D, E, F, and G were approved unanimously. So I'm going to go through those first. I'll come back and circle back to item number B. Item A was a request for approval to amend the parking lease agreement with Meeting Street Academy at Charlie Barn parking lot to decrease the number of parking spaces from 15 to 32.
Councilmember, this is Jennifer. I hate to interrupt, but can everyone keep their microphones on mute that aren't speaking because we're getting some background noise? Thank you.
The committee recommended unanimously to make that amendment to that lease agreement for parking spaces to reduce those spots from 15 to 32. We had then a discussion on an orders to amend Chapter 54 of our code on Article 9, administration and enforcement of vested rights. Julia Copeland, if you're still available, can give us a little more insight as to why we needed to do that and the improvements it made on addressing vested rights on zoning matters. So Julia, can I call on you, please?
Sure. Good evening, Chairman and members of council. This is the result of the recent settlement with the Grambling brothers. One of the issues was raised that there was a legal ambiguity in the explanation of when you would be filing for an extension of your vested right following your initial 2 years or within your 5-year extensions. So this amendment is basically spelling out specifically when you are supposed to file for an extension of your vested rights in either your initial phase or within your 5 extensions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Julia about that? And what the committee discussed is that this is going to help clarify and make more definitive what a applicant's vested rights are. And I think that we've had the benefit of Councilmember Hale's and of course our council's experience on dealing with this issue, and that was recommended unanimously. Item D, we recommended unanimously approval of the request for rental of Festival Hall, the amount of $3,000 of the Moja Arts Festival. Item E was mainly sort of a clarification on something that we had addressed earlier. This is sort of a naming issue from 67 America Street to Father's Grant. This is going to include 6 single-family residences. Once this is approved for affordable housing, Giona made a presentation to us to just sort of clarify what we're doing on that issue. And then item F was authorization for the mayor to execute on behalf of the city the first amendment to the MOU with Palmetto Railways. This entitles a transfer of 2.53 acres for 11.5 million, of which 4.9 is dedicated for mitigation, mainly dealing with the redirection of traffic. And Chip McQueenie is available. Chip, if you're there, I kind of ran through that rather quickly, but you may want to add a little bit more meat to that skeleton for us, please.
Yes, sir. And the only thing I would say is council, I think, approved this originally in March. And the $11.5 million can go to replacement facilities for what was going to be on the W.R. Grace site for that extra 2.53 acres. The city, I talked to Amy last week, the city's trying to find locations for, Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but police fleet management, the new public services, public work facility, and the fire department training facility. I did want to mention for council members in other areas of the city outside downtown, there's a TIF district in Magnolia that permits us to use money towards the purchase or construction of the public services facility that needs to be in a specific location. We can use the 11.5 million less the 4.9 million for mitigation of traffic in that area associated with the facilities or for those replacement facilities. There's no limitation on where that money is used, and it can be used for purchase or construction or other things. So we have a lot of flexibility with that second pot of money. It's just the 4.9 million that's restricted. The only difference between this approval and the prior one is that the prior one was subject to an economic development bond being issued by the General Assembly that was not issued, and this one it's conditioned on general appropriations towards the NBIF project. Those were adopted on July 1st, 2021. So it'll be effective automatically upon approval. So it just eliminates that previous condition about the economic development bond that was never issued. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chip, for filling in those gaps for me.
Yes, sir.
And then, Mr. Chairman, the other item was item G, the approval of an annexation for 2029 Ashland River Road. Councilmember Waring is trying to extend his jurisdiction that much more with another single-family residence. So I would recommend I move that items A, C, D, E, F, and G be adopted and approved by this Ways and Means Committee.
I'll second.
Moved and properly seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a question for number 1 on A.
Yes,
It's Councilman Mr. Chairman, on number A, when they're taking the changing the parking from 32 to 15. Now, when they change that parking, they're not going to be able to go in the community and park, are they?
I'm gonna ask Mr. Peter Roscoe to respond to that for us. Peter?
Because I don't need any problems around there.
This lot is a permit only lot. They are reducing their number of spaces from 32 to 15. And they say they only need 15 spaces. So I don't know where the other people would park. I think the mayor had an idea last week about, at the committee meeting about parking and Dominions, have a deal with Dominion. Have no idea where they come.
Peter, we're getting some background noise from someone else's microphone. So if everyone could mute themselves so it's not speaking. Thank you.
That was that's my only concern. If when they're cutting it down that way, where the other people are going to park, and if they're going to park in the community, then we'll have more problems again from the people in that community, because that's the area that I represent on that whole area. And so if they don't have that ample parking there will be parking in the community, and we're going to have another problem the same way I'm having on the east side on Lee Street as it stands now. So that's my only concern about it. So we need to really check to make sure they're going to have ample parking there if they eliminate 17 parking spaces.
Understood. They have the right to reduce them, and I can certainly seek out where they're going to park.
Right. Well, if you find that information, would you please get back with me? So if it comes up to the neighborhood president in that area, I can kind of inform them, what's going on.
All right. Yes, sir. I can check with Meeting Street Academy to make sure they have ample parking for those 17 and see where they plan to park them. I'll get back.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
any more questions? It's been moved and properly seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Item B.
Yes, sir. Thank you for letting me go out of order, Mr. Chairman. I thought it would be more expeditious if we did it this way. Item B is request for approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding between the city and Landmark Enterprises for the redevelopment of Sumar Street. This is the old Piggly Wiggly site located at 14 Sumar Street and at the intersection of Old Town Road and San Rittenberg. That was passed with one dissenting vote on that. We have several people available to make a presentation concerning this. This is the property that the city bought back in 2017 for just over $3 million. It was a former abandoned Piggly Wiggly site. At some point in time, there was an issue in which the owners were attempting to develop this property to put a 20-pump gas station located on there. As I mentioned, the city then moved to purchase a property. At some point in time, we then demolished the old Piggly Wiggly site. And then we engage in a process as to how to develop this property. I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Robert Summerfield. Robert, if you're still available, to sort of give us a quick synopsis of the steps that we're taking on how we came up with this plan and what it entails. We also have available David Humphreys, who helped negotiate with Landmark this MOU, Jason Ward, and I thought I saw somebody else from Landmark earlier on here, and Julia Copeland to give us a little bit more of a background information. So Robert, if I could pass it on to you first, please, sir.
Absolutely, sir. Jennifer, if I could share my screen, I have just a few slides to share with the members of the committee.
Sure.
So hopefully everyone can see the this is the site that we're talking about, Sumar here, with Old Town Road and Sam Rittenberg. This is based on the conversation with the community, additional work that was done during and after the RFP process. It was determined that the Sam Rittenberg option was the preferred option to move forward with and develop further. This would create a more urban frontage along the Sam Rittenberg alignment with more of an open space and civic type of entry off of Old Town Road. The proposal is a mix of different land use types. It includes civic space, office, retail, restaurant, and then of course parking, surface parking to park the site. There is hope that at some point, maybe in the future, as other things redevelop in the area, that there may be some opportunity for some kind of shared parking solution that then could free up some of the surface parking possibly for other development. But at this time, it is being parked with surface parking that's accessible from Sumar Street, not from either of the two main arterial roads. And you can kind of see a more artistic version of it down here. This design is influenced based on visual preference surveys and feedback that was received from the community, not just specific to this project, but during the development of the West Ashley plan or Plan West Ashley, to again have a more urban context, to incorporate a linear park and landscape element, and to include on this site, we did hear from the community specifically that some kind of civic space included in this and civic access on this site was preferable, particularly as this is a substantial gateway into West Ashley. When this went out for RFP, the RFP contemplated about 20,000 square feet of civic space. This would include an 8,000 square foot gathering space, meeting space where not only members of the community or groups in the community could have meetings, but also possibly when council goes out on their summer tour, this would give us a space in West Ashley where we could easily hold a future city council meeting at some date. Additionally, there'd be some office space in there. We could look at having some a higher presence of city facilities, city offices potentially in West Ashley, given that about half of our population lives in that area of the city. From the commercial side, there was expected to be about 3,000 or 30,000 square feet of office with an additional 10,000 square feet of retail and restaurant for a total development package of approximately 60,000 square feet. Since the RFP went out, obviously we've had some adjustments in the marketplace, some things have changed. So as we move towards this memo of understanding, or we've shrunk the square footage down by about 10,000 square feet and shifted some of that office space, the market office space, down to about 12,000 square feet, with an increase in the available retail and restaurant square footage up to approximately 18,000 square feet. All of this will get refined further as this process moves forward, assuming that the MOU is approved and we can move into that next phase of the design for this potential development. Finally, there were some questions raised during the previous meeting at real estate about the West Ashley TIF. So we've included some information about the TIF here that is available if Amy would like to talk to these numbers.
Is there any money in the TIF, Robert?
I will leave that to Amy because I am not as familiar with this TIF. And as I look, it looks like there's some revenue, but I don't know what's been encumbered and whatnot. So I would leave that to Amy to respond on.
Mayor, did I see your hand? Mayor?
Well, I have some information from Amy, but if she, there it is. Go ahead, Amy.
My apologies. Apparently my slide stopped for some reason.
Okay.
Okay, so with this TIF, we have not borrowed any money on the TIF yet, so we're not receiving any revenues. We don't get revenue until we do a borrowing. But as you can see, the top part, that's the assessed values that have been reported to us by the county. And then the estimated revenues that I calculated based on the assessed values. So you can see the initial. Is somebody asking a question? The initial equalized value decreased from 16 to 17 because of the sale of the Citadel Mall at such a discounted rate. And then it's increased. It actually did much better in 2020 than 2019. And then if you all remember too, Charleston County only is contributing 45%. So that will affect the revenues that we receive as well. But they're in it for the full 25 years with us. The county's only in it for 20. So if that answers your question, Councilmember Gregory, I'm not sure.
Not quite. What is this project going to cost total? And what would be our?
We don't know that number yet, Councilmember Gregory.
Okay.
Councilmember Gregory, and we will get some more input from other speakers, but this is just a memorandum of understanding to get the ball rolling on this project. As Robert has mentioned to you, he gave you the breakdown on what would be the civic side of this. And the remaining portion would be dedicated for commercial use, which would include retail space, restaurant space, and office space. So we've got to get to this stage of the MOU, and I'll let Julia Copeland chime in on some of the time restraints that are required under the MOU. And then we got Jason from Landmark who can also weigh in, and David Humphreys.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, where I'm going, and I'm just asking questions.
Sure.
I'm trying to find out what are the ways and means in order for us to make this happen.
In order for this to make
and a part of that has to do with the kind of revenue that will be generated from the TIF in order for the city to meet its obligations or its component of the project. So
yes,
that's the only reason I'm asking that question.
No, and I think those are very important questions, Chairman Gregory, to bring up, because what we're looking for right now is to start the process of developing this project. And then we're going to have to get into the weeds about the cost of it at a certain point. And if I can get Ms. Copeland to jump in, I think she can give you a better idea of the timeline and then and how this thing is going to progress. So Julia, I could call on you to pick up the ball from this point.
Absolutely. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
All right,
Mr.
excellent.
Chairman, council members Seekings and Councilmember Waring had their hands up.
Councilman Seekings, do you want us to complete this, or do you guys want to talk before Julia?
Well, I just have a very simple question that perhaps can get answered while they go give the next presentation. And that is, how will us entering into this MOU enhance the amounts of money that go into this TIF?
Well,
Councilmember,
I'll be happy to respond.
Mayor Tecklenburg?
It enhances it by setting up a thoughtful step-by-step development for the site, which will include not only the civic space mentioned, but also private development as well. The majority of it will be private development, which will, the improvements will go on the tax rolls and hence will add to the increment that is already starting to occur.
Can I just follow up really quickly? So
Yes.
the vertical improvements will include, but the land will not, correct?
That's correct. Although when we get to our development agreement, you know, we would have the flexibility to sell a portion of the property if council so chose.
Councilman Waring?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Wharton, can you go back to the chart with the TIF revenue, please?
Sure. Hold on. Let me just get out of my screen.
Thank you. You know, one of the things about TIF financing that has been so successful for this city occurred on the peninsula. I think there were maybe 5 TIF districts that Mayor Riley and his financial team put together over the decades. One congruency that they had, that there were no carve-outs. Basically, those TIFs, whether it was the Concord Street TIF or King Street TIF or even the right now the Cooper River Bridge TIF, all those TIFs, among others, have created monies that came to the city and was not predetermined to go elsewhere. It has proven to be tremendously successful for revitalization of the peninsula. It was that mindset that myself, Bill Moody, and others approached me in Raleigh about doing a TIF over West Ashland. Although this TIF was voted on by this administration, it was carved out by some of the most successful people carving out TIFs in the state of South Carolina. Mayor Riley, Steve Bedard, Charleston Dessasaw obviously was one and played a role in that. But one thing we're beginning to do here is carve out revenue, which means the beautification of Sam Rittenberg Boulevard from the North Bridge all the way to Savannah Highway will be hampered because some of the money is at least being talked about being carved out. So, and the reason I'm saying carved out, I know there've been discussions with this Epic Center or still Citadel Mall people that a certain amount of this revenue is going to be carved out. Keep in mind also that the Charleston County School District, the previous, and that's the largest collector of taxes in the county, on all the TIFs on the peninsula participated fully. They're only participating here to the tune of 45%. Ms. Wharton, can you tell me out of this revenue of $855,000, how much of that will go to the Epic Center?
So Councilmember Waring, I did not take that out of the TIF. I'd have to go back and look at the specific TMS numbers that are coming out and give you that number later, if that's okay.
Well, that'd be wonderful, but I think would it be suffice to say that once that's done, that revenue stream is going to be reduced?
It will, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's my point. We can move forward. I'm looking forward to hearing Ms. Copeland's explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Copeland?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Jennifer, would you mind giving me the screen back? Or Robert?
Robert, yes.
Okay, let's try this again. And I apologize to anyone who has already seen this before. I'll try to make it just as exciting as yesterday. So
You did a great job with that yesterday.
You did do a good job.
You had to repeat your wonderful performance.
How sad. So I will go through this real quickly with you guys. The point of this presentation really is to go through the details of the MOU that's before you tonight, to give you some level of detail so you know what you're going into going forward. So just Mr. Summerfield mentioned the square footage, but what I wanted to point out here and break out for you specifically as we go through these terms is the 12,000 and the 8,000 civic space and office space will be referred to as city-owned property or the city project as we go through these terms. And the 12,000 and 18,000 square feet of privately leased office space and retail and restaurant for Landmark will be referred to during this presentation as the Landmark project going forward. And why is my screen not working? There we go. Okay, so the intent of this MOU, everyone, is to allow this process to proceed in earnest with the aim of finalizing a budget, scope of work, and a schedule, and a mutually acceptable development agreement and ground lease between these two parties. So what should happen during the term of this MOU? So Landmark is going to immediately start its initial planning and analysis work, which we're calling the first phase. And that's detailed in Exhibit 1 or Exhibit A in the MOU. And the rough estimate on completion of this first phase will be May 1st of 2022. It's roughly 7 months. And in Exhibit A, it goes through a detailed list of the things that Landmark is going to work to begin processing and putting together for the city to push this project forward. That includes preliminary site design, additional surveying, geotech testing, environmental phase 1, any BZA parking variance process that they need to go through. They're going to initiate this. Community development, they're going to go through the TRC application process with those initial meetings, provide to the city color renderings, landscape architecture, schematic design plans, and work toward a design development plan at 35 to 40% for the city to consider. DRB conceptual approval, pricing package for us, and then ultimately the goal is to present to us a guaranteed maximum price cost proposal contract for consideration. So by June 30th of 2022, that's roughly 60 days after that May 1st deadline, Landmark should present to council a GMP contract for review and consideration. And bear in mind, we'll also be working simultaneously on the development agreement and a commercial lease for presentation for council consideration as well. So what happens after that presentation? Perfect case scenario, we all agree and come to terms on the GMP, the development agreement, and the commercial lease, and construction begins in earnest. If that doesn't happen, there's 2 other provisions in here that could end the term of this MOU. At the end of the 30 days, which we'll have as a review period, which can be extended by the parties mutually, we cannot come to an agreement on the lease or the development agreement or the GMP. That would end the term of this MOU. In the event that we do come to terms on the GMP, but we can't get to a ground lease and a development agreement that we're all happy with within 18 months, that's approximately March of 2023, then either party can give notice, 90-day notice, and walk away from the agreement. So what happens after that? This is where we talk about eligible expenses. So Landmark has committed to incurring up to $683,500 of eligible expenses working through this phase 1. And that amount can only be increased by a vote of council. How are they incurred? They're out-of-pocket expenses by Landmark. They'll submit contracts to the mayor or his designee. We'll have 30 days to review these contracts. If we approve or we provide no response within 30 days, they're deemed approved. But only until they are approved will Landmark incur that expense and move forward with that contract. Also, Landmark's agreed per the MOU to provide monthly reports on incurred expenses the 20th of every month. So what do we get for those eligible expenses if we do pay them? We'll be getting the results of the planning and the cost analysis work. Within 15 days of payment, if the city agrees to payment, we'll be receiving all the documents and all the plans that Landmark worked on within that 7-month period or beyond. And if we come to an agreement, those costs are folded into the construction itself. So let's talk about just some key terms in the MOU that we'll be putting into or working toward putting into the development agreement. Excuse me. Landmark will manage the turnkey construction of the project. The project will be constructed in accordance with the final approved plans and in direct consult with the city's designated project manager. We're going to come to a mutually agreed upon time of completion and try to hit that goal. This is important. Landmark will be responsible for all costs for design and construction of the Landmark project portion. And the city will be responsible for all costs and design costs for the city side or the city project of this build out. But that will be subject, of course, to the guaranteed maximum price of that contract that we work out between the 2 parties. So in exchange for Landmark's work, we'll be providing to them on their Landmark project side a 99-year lease at an absolute net basis with an annual base rent of $10. Funding sources for the project and the development agreement. The city will issue West Ashley TIF revenue bonds in an amount sufficient to finance the reasonable development costs necessary for design and construction. Landmark's going to utilize the city's Minority Business Enterprise Program. The city will provide for step-in and cure rights together with other reasonable rights or assurances as are reasonably required by Landmark's lender to allow for the financing of the construction of this project. So like I said, the $683,500 was a figure provided by Landmark using Leolio to provide the workup. So they'll be able to answer any questions you may have about that figure and what went into that figure. And I've also got David Humphreys here, who was key in the negotiations of this MOU to begin with. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm still going back to the means. How much money will be in that TIF in 2023 to help with the financing of this project? Because that's where our funds are coming from, am I correct?
Well,
The mayor has his hand up, Mr. Chairman.
Mayor Tecklenburg?
well, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, could I first, we've had this presentation, could I make a motion to approve this item so we can have it on the floor?
I still move and or second.
Official discussion.
Yes.
And I'd be happy to respond to that question.
It's been moved and properly second. It's time for discussion. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Thank you. I'll respond to the question, and then if you don't mind, I'd like to make a few comments. Amy shared with you the assessed value that we get from the county every year. Of course, we don't know the increased value that will occur exactly over the next 3 years because it hadn't happened yet. But as it does, every year we get a report from the county. And then when we finally issue our first borrowing on the TIF district, then the clock will start ticking. So the increment to date, despite the setback we had in the value of Citadel Mall, is almost $5 million with almost a projected $1 million worth of revenue. Of course, we hadn't really started receiving it yet because we hadn't issued the first debt. But it is now growing at a pretty nice clip over the last couple of years, and there's a lot of redevelopment and improvements happening out in the district. So every expectation is that it will continue to increase and be able to provide us revenue. However, to say exactly, you won't know till you get there. So, Mr. Chairman and committee members, I would respectfully ask your support for this MOU. As I mentioned, it kind of takes us on a very reasoned step-by-step approach to get to the next part of design and cost so that we know where we're going with the project. As has been noted, you know, this is a gateway to West Ashley. It's one of the first corners you come to when many people arrive West Ashley. And it deserves so much more than a gas station or some run-of-the-mill development. That's why we bought it in the first place. Our substantial civic engagement, public engagement, indicated our citizens would like some municipal, some civic use of the property. Could be partially a park, and that's included here, or a civic facility as is being proposed. And this revitalization effort, I may add, is different from what had occurred on the peninsula for years in terms of the city making an investment in a civic facility, because West Ashley doesn't have City Hall. It doesn't have the Gilliard. It doesn't have the Dock Street Theater. It doesn't have Meminger Festival Hall. It doesn't have the museums and the art galleries. So I think it's incumbent upon us to make an investment in West Ashley as we develop this property and have the opportunity to. I did want to point out that in conjunction with this site's redevelopment, the county, as presented to the West Ashley Revitalization Commission last week, has been presented before, has substantial bike and pedestrian crosswalk improvements for this whole triangle area around Ashley Plaza Center on both the Sam Rittenberg and the Old Town Highway. So the combination of the county investment along with the city investment will really make this portion of West Ashley more livable, more walkable, more friendly, provide a gathering place for our citizens for not just shopping in a restaurant, but for civic functions, a farmer's market, a small concert. So many wonderful things can happen here to bring our citizens together. We have over half of the population of our city west of the Ashley, and I think it's wise for us to make an investment such as this. Other places, you could build a civic building somewhere else in West Ashley. That's true, such as Citadel Mall. But we're committed to Citadel Mall and helping that development be revitalized, as well as Councilmember Waring just pointed out. Speaking of a carve out, so to speak, of a TIF district, it's the only place in this TIF district that we have provided for a carve out is in fact at Citadel Mall. So the improvements that we do at Citadel Mall will be funded by the revenue that's generated by Citadel Mall. And by the way, Mayor Riley started that practice decades ago when he did the Magnolia TIF district to have specific carve-outs, if you will, for development and revitalization, all being public improvements, of course. So back to your question, this MOU just provides for the architectural and all those things that Julia showed on there. It gets us to the next step that we would know how much we would be spending for a civic facility there. I'll be honest with you, we might get to next summer and the price tag might be through the roof, and we may dial this thing back or decide it needs to be more park than building. That's a decision we need to thoughtfully make when we have the real information as a result of that this MOU will bring us. So again, I respectfully ask for your support. It gets us down the road for the redevelopment of this kind of critical piece of property, West Ashley, and I think it'll be a wonderful addition to our city. Thank you.
Councilman Griffin.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to thank Councilmember Shaheed and the mayor for leading this effort over the last couple of years. If you go back to 2017, you know, $3 million was a pretty hefty price tag, but you know, it accomplished its goal, which was to block a gas station from going there. Unfortunately, you know, this process has drug out for the last 4 years, and nobody wants to see this parcel sit vacant, not another day. And we've got to do something to benefit the community. We've got to do something to make it the gateway into West Ashley. My concerns are that I don't know if we've been very transparent about this process from the beginning, in terms of there hasn't been a lot of community involvement. There hasn't been a lot of council member involvement. We have, you know, had the mayor and Councilmember Shaheed really lead this thing. And they have expressed what they want to see there. But I don't even know if you asked for a consensus on council, whether or not the rest of council is going to say they want a municipal building on that site. And I don't even know if our citizens, I don't think they care whether or not we build a multi-million-dollar facility on that site. You know, we have made an investment as a city into the Epic Center. And if we wanted to offer some city opportunities that we could do so at that site, instead of, I think my internet's a little unstable. Can y'all still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. It's glitching in and out a little bit. I'm concerned about the RFQ process still to this day, just because we only had one response. And that tells me that maybe there was something wrong with the RFQ. Why didn't we have more organizations jump at this opportunity? Because we thought this was going to be an excellent opportunity. And then if you look at this MOU, and we're talking about investing another almost $700,000, into this project, which was already over 3 million. We're getting close to that $4 million mark. You got to wonder what would happen if we actually put this back out on the market and we looked at what the private sector would pay for this site. I'm concerned that we may have overspent, and as a knee-jerk reaction, we're trying to come up with this plan that is, maybe covers up for the fact that we may have overspent for the site. I've just got a lot of questions, and I just don't know if we should vote on an MOU if we're not even that we should invest millions and millions of dollars into a municipal building. Because I'm telling you right now, I work in commercial development and warehouse building. It is going to be a substantial, multi-million, at least $5 or $6 million to build this building. We know that during these times, we don't have that kind of money. So is this really what's best for our citizens? That is kind of where I'm at, and it's been weighing on me. I think that y'all have done a great job, Councilmember Shea and Mr. Mayor, of leading this charge. In a perfect world, this would be the best site ever, and I'd love to see it. But I just don't know if this is the best investment for our citizens. I just don't know whether or not, when we look back on this thing 10 years from now, if this is the way that it should go. And that's no slight at Landmark either, because I think they've done a fantastic job. They've always been receptive to us, and they've tried to meet all of our needs. But I think that the private sector does a better job than the public sector does when it comes to real estate. I think we should get out of the real estate game more. And I'm worried that if we're the ones that are controlling this municipal building, we're going to end up deferring a bunch of maintenance compared to if it was in the private sector, it would be maintained a lot better. So those are my concerns. I appreciate y'all taking a few minutes to listen to me.
Just for a point of clarity, Councilman Griffin, I do think that council had voted on this concept some time ago. So this isn't something that we're just throwing on council. I think that what's happening, it's attempting to evolve. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, we voted on this concept some time ago, if I'm correct. Councilman Shea?
Yes, sir. If I could respond to that. So I think back in September of 2019, and I could move out of the picture. Oops. I don't know if y'all see that. So, but the screen behind me is what was presented to council back in September of 2019. And Councilman Warren has brought to our attention that there's been 4 new council members who have been elected since that presentation. But the general concept of this has been extremely transparent, Mr. Chairman, that we have presented this, and the mayor was very strong on this component. We went to the public and asked them what would they like to see at this location. And the results of that were what you have seen by Mr. Summerfield when he presented that slide to us earlier, of sort of a mixed use concept. Retail, restaurant, office space, and the civic center on the front of the property. What's going to actually be entailed in that civic center, I don't know. I've got my ideas on it. I have my preferences on it. There may be 12 or 13 different preferences or opinions on that, but we can't make that decision until we get to this particular point. What's really critical to keep in consideration is this. This spot has been vacant for a considerable amount of time before I got on council. The Piggly Wiggly closed before I was elected to city council. Under Mayor Riley's concern, his last few years in office, attempted to address some of those concerns. We created the Revitalization Commission to address how this is going to be revitalized. And we bought the property in order to control what went there. Otherwise, we would be fighting every time somebody brought out a petition to build something industrial or something, I should say industrial, something commercial, did not fit the overall plan of revitalizing West Ashland. That's a huge problem for us to consider. And I have to shout out to my predecessor, Mr. Aubrey Alexander, and the predecessor before him, Paul Tinkler, who joined me and scores of other folks to raise our opposition to the creation of a 20-pump gas station at this location to fight it back. So as the mayor has said earlier with this, we've got control over this property. This MOU simply is just to start the process of developing this project through the timeline that Julia went through very meticulously with. If it is the will of council, and I know I can't speak for all of y'all, but if it is the will of council that the Civic Center includes something like a city hall, there will be a gathering space. So it could be the West Ashley City Hall facility. And how wonderful that would be. Just think about this for a second. Because Councilman Waring has talked about this repeatedly, and I can't agree any more than how he points this out. This is the gateway to where South Carolina was born. And this is the gateway to where the city of Charleston was born. And so our opportunity to address this location is important. But the other component of this is that the first formation of a government, and the first exercise of a government in the state and in the city was right down the street from where my head is right now, that you see on the screen. That was at Charlestown Landing. That was in Ashleyville, Maryville area. That was the first form of government. And here we are, if we can hold government functions. This is not a fire station. This is not a recreation facility. This is not a forensic center. This is us making a statement to the citizens of West Ashley that we're going to be invested, that we're going to take seriously the revitalization of West Ashley and show that we're committed to helping improve this area overall. This is going to spur and create a incubator of other development taking spots. As the mayor alluded to, this has been a long process for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons has been that we've been working simultaneously with the county on redeveloping some of the traffic concerns along San Wittenberg and Old Town Road and Orange Grove Road and other areas surrounding this particular area. And we went through several gyrations as to proposals that went through citizen participation on this back in 2018 and 2019. And our holdup on developing this MOU was to make sure we knew what the county had in mind. And so they created this overall plan. And we have seen what this traffic plan will look like. This is going to create an incentive for connectivity, which is a critical component that the citizens of West Ashley talked about, not just in my district, but in other areas when we were doing Plan West Ashley, an area of connectivity to this area. One of those components includes a pathway from Orange Grove Road, where the old Bilo used to be located, by Amberley Street, so people can either walk or bike to come to this area. And Sumar Street is going to see a huge changes to include crosswalks and then a new stoplight further down by Amberley Street. So this whole concept is not just something that we're picking out of an isolation. This whole concept is including a huge traffic redesign to improve traffic flow, to slow traffic down a little bit, and to give citizens an opportunity to have access to this area that hopefully, as we go through this process, will show a huge improvement in livability for the citizens of West Ashley. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, just a follow-up question. How many cities of our size have done something similar?
That's a good question. I really don't know the answer to that question, Mr. Chairman.
I mean, for me, it's an important question. We're a city the size of, and I'm not against this, I'm just asking questions for clarity. Will it compete with the Gilliard?
No, sir. No,
Okay.
this is not going to compete with the Gilliard. But what will entail with the civic area, we could, this is a possibility, we could put some city offices there, so citizens will have access, West Ashley, to some city businesses that can be done there. We'll have meeting spaces so that neighborhood associations can meet there, which is badly needed over this part of West Ashley. And it can hold small arts related performances in this area, depending on how we design it. Depending on how we design it.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes, Mayor Tecklenburg.
And Mr. Chairman,
And Councilmember Appel has his hand up as well.
reiterate that over half of the proposed development is private. And Councilmember Griffin makes a point, and sometimes in a development like this, the private sector does a better job. And that's why we put out the RFP in the first place, to make this a public-private partnership and have the private sector really do the heavy lifting in terms of, with our approval, the design, development, and they'll be owners of about 60% of the development, which, as I noted to Councilmember Seekings, will be on the tax rolls and paying taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember.
Councilman.
Waring.
Yes. Councilman Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Councilman Waring.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the recognition. And Mr. Chairman, you asked a very good question. Are there any other cities that do things like this? And I've got a great example. The city of Charleston. We've been doing public-private partnerships in this city since Mayor Riley was first elected. And I would argue it's the reason Charleston got pulled out of the dustbin of history into one of the most amazing cities in the country, if not the world. I mean, everything from the Charleston Place to Waterfront Park to the aquarium, more recently, the Low Line, our investments in the Joe Riley Stadium, the Daniel Island Tennis Center. We're doing creative, collaborative partnerships with the private sector all the time in the city of Charleston. This is nothing new. The specifics and details are a little bit distinct here in some ways because it's a unique situation, but philosophically, there's not very much different with this project than what we're doing and have been doing for generations here in the city of Charleston. And, you know, it takes investment, it takes vision. You know, I'm proud to represent a portion of West Ashley. I'm born and raised in West Ashley, but let's face it, y'all. I mean, West Ashley is struggling in some key areas, and it needs not just the financial commitment, but the psychological investment, the psychological commitment that we're not just talking about revitalization of West Ashley. We're putting our money where our mouth is. And we've seen that too. I mean, look at how the TIF where the Low Line is located has taken off. A lot of that big time real estate investment that we've seen take place in that area is due to the fact that there's just a concept of a low line out there because the capital sees that on the horizon and they want to get involved. We're hoping to have a similar type of dynamic happen here. And on the issue of delay, look, one thing I think we can all agree on as local government elected folks is that things don't happen overnight, whether it's, you know, getting a stormwater easement set up or whether it's doing a big public-private partnership. Look how long poor Mayor Riley had to belabor and battle to get the Charleston Place going, to get the Waterfront Park. I read his autobiography over the winter. The dude was talking about the aquarium in the 70s, okay? I mean, things take time around here. It takes vision. Frankly, I still think we're in the first inning of this. 3 and 4 years for a development horizon in the city of Charleston is not that long at all. In terms of just, let's just say we all of a sudden, this is the fork in the road where we decide to get out of public-private partnerships and just become this like libertarian, you know, approach to let the free market figure out everything. We know what the free market wants to do on this site. They want to put a gas station on it. That's unacceptable to us. It was similarly unacceptable when we saw certain other types of development proposed downtown where the city intervened to make things happen that was guided in a more civic direction. And West Ashley needs some serious commitment and investment. Is this the best concept and this best idea? I don't know. I know that it's the best we've got. I think West Ashley investment in revitalization is way overdue. And look, some signing this MOU or proceeding with this MOU, as Mayor Tecklenburg's pointed out and Ms. Copeland has pointed out, does not mean we're on this fast track to doing anything. It's a very measured, conservative approach to taking this one step at a time. And we've got plenty of departure points along the way if things become untenable. But I think this is a put up or shut up time for West Ashley revitalization. And I'm happy to vote for this MOU to move this process forward. Thank you.
Councilman, you didn't quite, you started with attempting to answer my question, but you never did. My question was whether or not there are other cities the size of Charleston that's doing it. And I think you started off, but you never really answered that.
Councilmember Gregory, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, I just think that it's a very legitimate question.
Yeah,
that for me should be one of the starting points. Councilman Waring.
Thank you. I continue to be impressed by the intellect of my colleagues on this council. Very good speech, Councilmember Bell. Mr. Mayor, you were inaccurate when you said we have $5 million in the TIF to put towards this, and you know that's not accurate. The council member, the chairman of real estate knows that's not accurate. And CFO knows that's not accurate. That was actually shown on the chart portrayed before us, showing the 20 figure being its highest at $800 and some odd $1,000. Mr. Chairman of Real Estate, Councilman Shahid, I know your heart is in the right place, but transparency, and it's apropos that we're in Ways and Means. The ways and means of how we're going to pay for something. We don't need to be less than accurate on how we're going to pay for something. If we don't have the money right now, just say that we don't have the money. Councilmember Appel, all those wonderful projects you spoke about, those developers came to the table with money. The public-private partnership, and they are wonderful. The Gilliard probably being one of the best, the International African American Museum being another, and you're right, the aquarium being still yet another, but it's the state of South Carolina aquarium. It's a collaboration between a number of entities. When I look at that collaboration here, remember, this isn't a blighted area. This isn't a ghetto. This isn't a crime-infested area. Charleston Place site was a crime-infested area. Waterfront Park was warehouses that burnt down, and you had burnt cinders standing up in the marsh out there. Where the aquarium was one of the worst contaminated sites in the state of South Carolina. I mean, the soil facts will tell you that. And it took that kind of collaboration, and you're right, wonderful participation for those things to happen. That's not this site. What we have here is essentially an agreement for the developer to basically pay the developer $683,000 if this goes away. And if we want to appropriate that and commit to that, that's fine. We don't have to go through, we can carve out, think about it, if we're going to build a civic center, will we have one bid and one bid only? That's what we're setting ourselves up for here. We have a figure of north of 3 million, or I guess when you add tearing the building down, 3.2, maybe $3.3 million in here. We're setting up a motion in place where we would let the developer have their property for 99 years for $10. Let me repeat that. The developer would have this property that the taxpayers paid north of 3.2 million for. That's 60% that the mayor's talking about. The developer potentially would have that in this agreement. We're setting up the wheels in place to do this, and they would have that for $10 for 5 generations. And I submit to you, Councilmember Appel, there is no agreement like that Mayor Rowley did. There is no agreement that a mayor in the history of Charleston has done. And if you were to say, for what? To revitalize one of the worst areas in the city of Charleston or in the state of South Carolina, this is not that site. Do we need collaboration? I agree. But we don't have to give it away. We can carve out, Mr. Chair, the portion that you feel, that triangular portion behind you. You're a good looking guy, but that landscaping looks a little bit better. We can carve that out, reserve that property, landscape it. And if we want to put a civic site there later on, when money materializes, we can do that. We don't have to wrap that up in this agreement. We don't have to commit to 5 generations of giving this property away for $10 after the taxpayers have spent north of $3 million to do that, Councilmember Appel. We don't have to do that. We can carve out a better agreement than this. We can wait until the money materializes in this TIF to see what the bonding capacity is going to be. All this is the developers said, hey, I put time into this, and they're legitimate people. Landmark is legitimate. We've seen their signs on wonderful projects around the town. Dinos Leolio is a born and bred Charlestonian that continues to put world-class architectural designs in our community as we speak. Look at Fire Station 11, look at the Waring Center, look at the park that's being built, the Carl Richardson Park being across from the watershed of Charlestown Town Landing. We have great people associated with it. But when it comes to building a civic center, if we chose to do that, is it right for the taxpayers to have one bid where basically we pick up the phone and ask the people to bid? Or is it right to go out with an RFQ on something that we got over 100,000 people in the city, in West Ashley, not all in the city, but certainly in the mid 70,000s. The mayor alluded to the highway improvements that the county shown at the West Ashley revitalization. He's right. It was beautiful. But what they both left out is that the county person said, we have monies to start something right now, but we need some help from the city as a match. And we could ramp it up. There was no comment as to where can we get this money from to wrap up those improvements, to ramp up those pedestrian bike lanes, to ramp up those intersections being installed. It is the vision that we would have a Johnny Dodds Boulevard. That happened as a result of Mayor Harry Hallman's insistence that monies came out of half-cent sales tax to see those improvements, the landscaping to the right and the left, the landscape median in the right, the ornamental lightings down, we used to call it 17 bypass, but now Johnny Dodds. That was envisioned for Sam Rittenberg from Orange Grove Road all the way to Savannah Highway. We haven't seen that to say we, as a council, we choose the Civic Center versus having a wonderful boulevard down there that will attract not only business to this location, but all up and down the TIF district. All we've seen is one plan and one plan only. We still have time to do that. We don't have to look at this agreement. Why would we tie up taxpayers' dollars at this site? Doesn't have contamination, doesn't have blight, doesn't have crime infested. Not all that wasn't the case in many of the sites you spoke about, Councilmember Phil. For 99 years, let's take that out. Okay, let's carve out the portion, Councilmember Jayed, that you say, hey, we need at least the portion that you have behind your head. The point, what is the gateway? And I'm a big fan of dressing it all up. You all know that. Let's carve that out, this agreement. And let's really put it up for competition. And let's let Landmark do what they do best. They don't do civic centers. That's not their track record. They do commercial development. Well, carve out that 60% and let them move forward with that. And if we want to commit to the better part of 700,000 for them to draw plans if they walk away, then as a council, we can vote that up or down. But let's keep our finances flexible so we can get the best out of this location for that West Ashley, all of the residents deserve. And we're not doing that with this agreement. The reason this is a sketchy subject is because we have political alliances. When it comes to the integrity of the agreement to tie up taxpayers' property for 99 years, 5 generations for $10, I submit that doesn't have integrity tied. We can do better than that. We can let Landmark move forward on the portion that they do best. And if this city wants to commit to a dollar amount for those development plans, such that if they were to walk away, well, I guess we got the plans. But actually, it was Councilmember Seekings, and I have to correct you, Councilmember Shea, we didn't vote on that in 2019. It was a wonderful presentation, and we saw the presentation that's on the screen behind you. It was for discussion, that's all. We didn't vote on it. The clerk will confirm that. That said, we do need to vote at some time on it, but let's get more than one idea to vote on. And it may very well be the Civic Center, or it may very well be a public space with amphitheater with a fountain, our version of Pineapple Fountain, or our version of the water feature that's in Hampton Park. I know right now it's got a feature there of a tower, but I got to be frank. I would pray that we don't do that. Not in a day of open carry, where people can go up there and pick people off with rifles and guns and things like that. We can put something more attractive than that. We can make this better, and that's what I submit. Nobody will tell you that I want to hold up West Ashley's revitalization. That's just not accurate. But we need money. We got a wonderful partner in the county that's willing to put up money, but the county is not going to put up all the money to beautify Sam Rickberg that's in this TIF. The city's going to have to be a willing partner, and where some of that money is going to come from, it's got to come from this TIF, Mr. Mayor and Councilman Shahid, because we don't have money and have since sales tax that was passed in, I believe, 2016, as Mayor Hallman did to improve Johnny Dodge Boulevard. It's going to have to come from this TIF. So anyway, that's my take. We doing. I get frustrated when we do less than for West Ashley because we deserve better. I get frustrated when we hold this site off of the market and use it as a place of refuge for trash after storms. Yes, I get frustrated when we use it for Carter to practice right turns and left turns. We would never do that. As chair, I would never vote for that. And I didn't vote for that. West Ashley deserves better than that. We haven't planted one azalea bush or spread a packet of wildflowers on this site in 4 years. But yet still we talk about revitalization. You cannot see coming into that gateway off the North Bridge, the kudzu and the weeds are so high you barely can see the marsh. We've struggled, and you're right, Councilmember Appel, we struggle with this West Ashley revitalization. We can't even cut the weeds. God has provided a wonderful, pristine marsh, and we let the weeds grow up and block. Can we do better than that? We all know we can do better than that. And we shouldn't have to have this kind of to and fro, literally to get weeds cut or to get some beautification done. While that site is being waited to be developed, whether it's a civic center or not, Councilmember Shade, that gateway could have been pristine as we speak at this moment. But we kept it off and kept that process from happening. So I would submit that we should, I don't have any problems carving out the site portion for the, if councils should choose to do the civic center or not. I do not agree with any developer getting any portion of this site for 99 years for $10. That's just abhorrent. And if we want to just say, okay, Mr. Developer, you got creative juices, show us what you can do on this 60%, and we want to pay them a fee to do that, then let's vote that up or down. Don't get in this old convoluted agreement that our own legal counsel has to preface before they speak. Because the truthful part about it, Exhibit A, which shows from September 21 through May 22nd of next year, we all know nothing's going to be done at that site. We all know that. So again, my blood pressure is getting up. because I care and I love West Ashley. We can do better. Thank you.
We don't want to do that, Councilman. Councilman Shade.
Thank you, Mrs.
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to point out, it's after 6. I know we have a number of people who are probably waiting to sign on to city council. So I just wanted to remind everyone.
I'll keep my remarks very brief, Mr. Chairman, and I just need to respond. And I have to bristle at the suggestions that we have been anything but less than transparent. That's just not accurate. And I'm going to give you a little breakdown on this thing. After we purchased the property in 2017, in June of 2018, the City Planning and Design Division did a survey on community input for the site. On July 10th and July 11th, the City Design had hosted a workshop in tandem with online survey with us. On August 1st, 2018, those results of those surveys were presented to the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. At the same time, while this was going on, we had a series of presentations on how to improve this intersection from the fall of 2018 until the spring of 2019. We have engaged the public and this council on numerous occasions to receive input on what we're going to do with this property, and also to improve this whole overall area. This is not about planting azaleas. This is about a vision for West Ashley, for how we can make this a better place for all of us to live, and to incorporate and include the citizens into this project. And we did present this to City Council in September. We may not have voted on it, but we presented to you the ideas on this, and we presented at least two times, to the West Ashley Revitalization what Landmark had proposed. Yeah, let's keep the vote in front of us and what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a lease right now. We're not talking about a development agreement right now. What we're talking about very simply is a memorandum of understanding to get the ball down the court, to push this down the field. And once we get this process done, this is going to give us the framework. As the mayor said, we may elect, as a council, we may elect to sell off that portion that Councilmember Waring is talking about and avoid this 99-year lease. We may not want to go down that road. We're not at that particular point right now, colleagues. What we're talking about simply is, let's get the ball started. Let's start the process. Let's see where this leads us. We've got some parameters on doing that. And I'd ask for everybody to vote for this thing, because I think this is the direction that the citizens want for us to go down to help revitalize West Ashley.
Mr. Chairman, there's a point I need to address. Councilman Shahid, I never said you didn't have public hearings on it. But I am saying you have not been transparent, you or the mayor, to council or the public on how it's going to be paid for. And Councilmember Griffin, it's not $5 million. We were told in 2019 that it would be between 15 and possibly as much as $20 million. Now, Councilman Shahid, at what public hearing, what news article, what meeting at West Ashley Revitalization did you or the mayor say, well, right now we're in Ways and Means, and everything that we're going to vote on in a few minutes will have a source of payment? The mayor has said, the mayor has said $5 million is basically in this TIF ready to go forward. And I've said that's not accurate. That isn't accurate. So the public, the transparency that I'm talking about is the finances simply to pay for it. We shouldn't have to guess about that. We knew how we were gonna pay for the Gilead. We knew the financial formula to pay for the aquarium. We knew the financial formula to pay for the International African American Museum. We do not know this for this 15 to 20 million that we were told by you, at least you told that to me, at 2019. It was a presentation. So my point is, let's clear that portion up. None of us really know. I don't know. None of us know where those revenues are coming from, but we can find out.
Okay, we're gonna start winding up. Mayor Tecklenburg.
Thank you. And I would like to respond and clear that up. I was just taking the information from what Amy shared with us, y'all, a few minutes ago. And maybe I didn't enunciate it clearly, Councilmember Waring, but the approximate $5 million that I mentioned is the difference between the initial equalized assessed value of the district and the equalized assessed value as of 2020. It says right here, 4,803,910. In my math, you round up from 4.8 up to 5. I was just rounding up to 5 million. The estimated revenue, excuse me, I have the floor right now. The estimated revenue.
Order, Mayor Trachtenberg.
The estimated revenue, I also mentioned, is clearly shown on this sheet, is $855,938 if we were receiving it. More than enough to cover this 683,000 if it came about that we needed to pay it. Now, let me share something with you. I mean, maybe it went over our heads when Julia was making the presentation about the MOU and then the development agreement that we get to. If we move forward with the development agreement, we don't pay any 683,000 next year. It gets rolled into the project, the share of portion to the private sector to Landmark, and the portion shared with, responsible to the city would go to the city, but it would then become a part of the development agreement and the eventual build out of the project. So we don't even know until we get that guaranteed maximum price and make a decision about going forward or not, whether we would incur that cost next year. But if we did, we clearly have enough annual income from this TIF district to be able to pay the 683,000. So I just want to make that clear and for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I want clarification. You said $5 million. You didn't say 800 some odd thousand. And our CFO has already said that 800,000 will be reduced by the taxes on the properties in the Epic Center. The debate was never about whether the city had the ability to pay 683,000. It was the 5 million that you threw out there that I responded to.
That's different than the assessed value.
Mr. Chairman, can we call the question, please?
Right. And
Call the question.
Yeah, the first sake of order.
I agree. Call the question.
We're going
Order. Next is Marie Del Chapo, who has not said anything this entire time. Councilwoman Del Chapo.
I don't even know if I can say anything that's going to come across as polite at this time. It's 6:15. We have a lot of people signed up for citizen engagement tonight who have now been hanging out for an hour and 15 minutes so that we can all, except for save maybe a few comments, has been nothing but what I'm going to call a sales pitch. Let's call the question. You know by now how you're going to vote. Let's vote.
I agree. Call the question.
I agree as well.
Okay. It's been moved and properly seconded. No further discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
all in favor, say aye. And should we do this by hand?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Councilwoman Del Chapo,
Nay.
Councilmember Shealy,
Nay.
Councilmember Saccharin,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
I gotta say yes to, I'm on the board. I voted for it.
Councilmember Brady,
Aye.
Councilmember Gregory,
Nay.
Councilmember Waring,
Nay.
Councilmember Seekings,
Nay.
Councilmember Shea,
Yay.
Councilmember Griffin,
Aye.
Councilmember Appel,
Yes.
Councilwoman Jackson,
Yes.
Mayor Tecklenburg,
Yes.
the motion passes 7-6.
I've got a quick follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Griffin?
Do we have any idea? Yes, sir. Just want to know, do we have any idea when we would see this development agreement? Is this going to be something that's going to be several months from now, or is this something that we would
It's
see
several-
relatively.
Several months from now. Okay. I think this, the preliminary has to be completed before we can get to that. Okay. I think that's it. Is there anything else to come before this committee?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
This meeting